Welcome to this episode of YouTube where we'll feature some activities that went on the 4th of July weekend. First thing that was a little bit of a surprise to us is a woodchuck seems to have found its way into the enclosure. And this happened on Saturday, July 2nd, when we had temperatures well over 80 degrees with high humidity. The wolves were pretty much out of the area, sleeping up on top of the den, didn't even notice. This woodchuck is right in front of the greeting rocks, and don't know what stimulated him to come, although the woodchucks have been around this facility for a while. If you recall, years ago, Mackenzie had one living underneath her house in the retirement area, and she managed to chase it out of the fence up to the top overhang, and it kind of hissed at her as she sat up there. Also, Malik, when he was in retirement last summer, before Shadow joined him, had a woodchuck that was kind of doing some aggressive threat displays towards him in the enclosure. So don't know if this is the same woodchuck, but he's awfully very confident. He's right in the front of the exhibit, and again just kind of scurries along. Might be stimulated by some of the enclosure enrichment items that we've been doing. On the 4th of July weekend, we provided some stimulus during the 1 o'clock enrichment program, where the educators use the chimes that the wolves have become kind of conditioned to, and they use the chimes to call the wolves over towards the window and give them some bacon response or bacon retreat stimuli. And then that area there, when they did hear the chimes, that allowed a wolf care staff to come to the gate and to open the gate and roll in a couple of watermelons in honor of the 4th of July. Of course, wolves are carnivores, so watermelons aren't all that thrilling, but it was a stimulus and a different stimulus than what they'd normally had. So that worked out fairly well, and there was certainly a positive conditioning with the bells that was conducted by the ethology class. We still see some very strong association with them coming to the area of the open windows. And you notice Denali showed a little bit of fear response with the noise of the windows, but Aidan showed none at all. And so that was again a good experiment that we used with DAP spray to try to calm some of that anxiety that Aidan had with the window, and that worked out pretty well. So other than that, 4th of July was hot and humid, which makes for very inactive wolves. So again, this program done at 1 o'clock is done just for the exhibit pack. We don't get the Grizzer or the retired wolves up, it's just the exhibit pack, and you can see again it's a different stimulus, and that causes Denali to investigate and roll and to bite and to carry. Denali gives a little threat display, guarding his watermelon from Aidan. Of course, this is not a real food supply for Aidan, so he's not very interested in guarding or responding back. But good stimulus. It allows people to photograph the wolves, to get them up in a normal time when they would be out of view, and that's one of the challenges of a wolf exhibit. On a hot day like this, we may also do some ice cubes in the pond or something to get them stimulated to go into the pond and try to cool off. One of the other advantages of the enclosure enrichment program is for us to take a look at them, especially on these hot days, and make sure that they're feeling well and not having any issues. Because they do lay up in the upper part of the enclosure, sometimes underground, we may not see them for several hours. So the fact that the educators get a look at them at least every couple of hours, we can monitor things like their respiration, we can monitor their overall appearance by the looks of how much they're panting, how coloration of their tongue, if they're having any other issues with mobility. The educators can see that when they get them up for programs. These two are 3-year-olds. They're very healthy. They've lost all their winter coats, so they're very trim. They're not carrying extra hair, so they cool themselves fairly easily and really have no problem keeping cool. Grizzer has no problems keeping cool because his enclosure is extremely shaded with a lot of vegetation, and as you'll see here in a clip of howling, he manages to howl to the retired wolves, and that cover of vegetation makes it difficult to get a face-on view of him. You'll see the head area is completely healed over. We're now just waiting for follicle growth or hair growth to be able to regrow that hair on the top of his head. We're continuing to use lanolin on a daily basis to keep that skin pliable, and that makes his hair look a little spiky, but otherwise he's doing great. So enjoy his howling. Shadow Malik had a little bit longer time shedding, and you'll see in these photos they're still shedding out their coats a little bit. Shadow had a lot of trouble on July 1st and the 2nd because the days were so hot and so humid. It's very difficult for a wolf who does not sweat by sweat glands but cools off by panting to really cool themselves efficiently when there's a high humidity, because as they pant there's so much moisture in the air, nothing's really evaporating. So Shadow had a harder time, required a lot of individual sprinkling, hosing him, trying to keep him cool. Owen Bream was here monitoring him all weekend and did an excellent job making sure that he got through that heat and humidity okay. And then we have been really increasing the brushing and trying to get them to get some of that hair loose. And you'll see partway shedding there, not completely shed by any means, but definitely better than they were last week. So as we enter another weekend of some heat and humidity, the misting of the wolves as well as the sprinkler hoses will be continued all weekend long, try to keep him cool. He does stand under the sprinklers to get a good coating, so it's an easy way to get him cooled off with use of those sprinklers, but it's something that we are very mindful of 11-year-olds. So saw a little bit of clip there of Malik and he posturing again, Shadow more dominant, showing a chin rest. That was after a brushing session. Actually, they get a little competitive about wolf care staff and interaction, so they're doing well, but clearly Shadow's the more dominant of those two. And one of the other things you'll notice, lots of scraping here on the ground, and Shadow's going to do a raised leg urination with some scrape. And that woodchuck that was in the enclosure the other day, he actually did a scrape outside in the wolf yard, probably as he came out of the pen and maybe the wolves woke up and he started posturing and scraping and spreading the ground. That next morning, Shadow looks like he'd cleared out enough dirt for a garden space. He must have been scraping all night long in response to that woodchuck showing a little bit of scraping behavior. So it's been interesting, the communication, and as you heard from that video of the woodchuck, that was Shadow howling in the background. The other two didn't really notice. So Aidan and Denali, and I'm not sure what Grizzer did, but Shadow was pretty keyed into it. And here is another technique that we're using for Shadow and Malik. They're not very good about letting us put fly ointment on them, so we spray the rocks to help keep the flies out of the den, but it also serves a better benefit in that they scent roll on it, and that helps keep the flies at bay as well. So that's about it for this week. We hope to get through more heat and humidity. Work is continuing on Grizzer's enclosure. We are making progress and hope to share some footage of him in that new area sometime soon. Thanks. Again, have a good day.